Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm very happy to have Jeff de Graff with me today. Jeff is one of the big hitters in the world of innovation. He's got more than 3 decades experience in it. He's the professor at the University of Michigan on the subject. He's known as the Dean of Innovation, and he's also recently released his newest book, The Innovation Code. Jeff, it's wonderful having you here with us.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me on.
So for people who aren't aware of who you are or your background in innovation, can you just give us a brief history of where you started and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, I'm one of those kids who didn't do well in school and then got to college and went through super fast. So I was one of those 25-year-old PhDs in artificial intelligence. And then I did something crazy. I went to work for a man who had been bankrupt 2 years earlier. 5 years later, $5 billion later, it was Domino's Pizza. I was one of the executives. Retired at 29. Got brought to Michigan to teach MBAs, and I remember thinking they were dull, drab, and awful. Built these innovation labs. I've been in about half the Fortune 500. I've gotten lucky, insanely lucky. We had some smart kids, Larry Page, some other, founder of Google, some other kids who were smart kids, and wrote a few books along the way, had a few giggles, and maybe learned a couple things.
And it's those couple of things that we're hoping to get some value out of today. I'm sure we're going to have more than enough to talk about. But can you take us to your most recent book, The Innovation Code? What's the main synopsis of your current theories around innovation?
Yeah, I got tired of two things in all the popular literature. I got tired of the one-size-fits-all innovation stuff where there's a checklist. And anybody who's really done this in complicated situations and difficult organizations knows that's completely ridiculous. How you make a fine dining restaurant and make a Dreamliner fly for 50 years has nothing in common. And the second thing was I started noticing that a lot of innovation books were around process. And what really bothered me about that is at the heart of innovation is a form of deviance. It's a form of positive deviance, a form of useful novelty. And most process is designed to eliminate deviance. It's designed to pace deviance. And to me, that seemed very counterintuitive to the work that I had done. And the final part, the most important part of the work was what I had seen and what my research has also shown, and I can talk about valuation, is that innovation is not born from alignment. Innovation is the result of creative and constructive conflict, not conflict about people, but conflict about ideas. And I want you to imagine if these huge debates that are going on worldwide about populist versus federalist, or whether we're conservatives or we're progressives, or whether, the healthcare debate in the United States. Imagine if all that money and energy could be harnessed, generative energy, right? Imagine that instead of having compromise, we created a third way or hybrid way, which is how innovation typically is born. So the point is, I'm very much against this, safe places and trigger words. I'm in favor of having the discussion in a respectful way and producing things that are better and new. Useful novelty.
There's a lot to cover there. So let's take it in turns. The first one, which I think a lot of people, and especially the people who might be interested in innovation professionally who listen to this podcast, you seem to be suggesting that there's no one-size-fits-all methodology or process for innovation. But how far do you take that idea? Is it that only certain people can learn to innovate? Is it completely a mindset thing, or is there a degree of best practice or process? Well, there's two answers
to that. Yeah. There's 2 questions and 2 answers.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with the first. So stick with me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, the first answer is if you look at the 10 largest innovation indexes that we have, assessments of what are the most innovative companies, you'll notice that only about 1/4 of the companies show up on all the lists, and they're the real obvious ones, Apple and Google, et cetera. So the first question you have to ask yourself is why, right? There's only two hypotheses. The first hypothesis is that they're not talking about the same thing. And the second hypothesis is that what they think innovation is highly situational to a very specific situation. I want to add a piece to that. Since 1993, the 10 largest innovation indexes compared to the Russell 2500, which is the growth benchmark for Wall Street. Out of those 10, so think of it like about 300 shots on goal, they've only ever beaten the growth benchmark twice, which means whatever these people think innovation is, it doesn't pay. Here you are in this idea to value, right? That's the whole idea of what your web. It doesn't pay. So the notion right off the bat is what we think innovation is obviously all over the board. We don't have a shared agreement on that. And obviously what it is, it doesn't pay. Now, the second question you asked is even harder for people to deal with. And that is the world is really not truly a democracy. And you should have learned that when you sat next to Mozart at piano lessons or played basketball with Michael Jordan or did, physics with Einstein. You should have learned that everybody has an ability, and there is certainly the power of collective innovation, what's something called enterprise innovation. But innovation, even more so than ordinary management, is a meritocracy. People have particular skills. And to say that everybody has the skill to be Mozart is untrue. And everybody knows it's untrue. We want it to be true, but it's completely untrue. So one of the things I'm very big on when I build these innovation communities, these like my Innovatrium labs, is it's not about everybody can do everything. It's about getting the right players in the right position at the right time and knowing who they are. So yeah, I think there's a lot of mythology, and I think the research really says there's a lot of mythology.
Does that mean then that when people feel that they hear the word meritocracy, they think that the people are going to get their shot if their idea is good enough? But unfortunately, there's so many instances of companies having an internal leadership style which is about risk aversion and the desire to please the shareholder by only betting on sure bets. And therefore, the more innovative ideas, even if they get developed, they might not get implemented within the company.
I think that's the key issue is there's a tension. Now, I come back to constructive conflict. I'm a believer that tension is good. I'm a believer that diversity is good. So the whole idea of alignment being really important, not so much for innovation, for other stuff. So here's the key. I want you to think about this, Nick, like a person. What comes first in your life? Staying alive or growing? What comes first? Staying alive. So what companies do is just like people do, they start with staying alive. And staying alive has a lot of routine and standardization, things that will keep you safe, things where you go to get food that will give you food and you'll be safe. That's what companies do. They produce quarterly earnings, or they produce some kind of predictable outcomes, and they do this by developing processes and operating rhythms that basically reduce variation. Now, innovation is a form of variation. It's a form of deviance. Positive deviance, but deviance. So what you've got are systems that are designed to eliminate deviance, and innovators like you trying to introduce deviance. So here's the key. The key is if you try and introduce deviance in the heart of the organization, you're dead on arrival because the organization is designed to eliminate you. I want you to think about a bell curve just for a minute. The middle of the bell curve is not where innovation happens. Have you ever been in a crisis? You get a divorce, you lose a job, you lose your health. In a crisis, you're more likely to try stuff. Forget the self-help book. You try stuff in a crisis for a reason. And the reason is the risk of trying something radical and the reward of staying where you're at is reversed. And they know this when they deal with drug addicts and alcoholics, right? That's how you get them out of that. Nobody changes their lifestyle till their life sucks. The other time that organizations change is when they're on a roll. So this is when you, as a person, you graduate, you fall in love, something good, you win the lottery. And the reason is risk and reward reverses against what's called risk capital. Now, here's the point. The point is we keep trying to launch innovation right into the belly of the beast. And the belly of the beast is designed to destroy us. Innovation is an outside-in game. It's a pincer maneuver, right? It happens at the edges. and it moves to the middle. So you have to put innovation where it belongs. And that's why so much innovation happens in the down cycle. I'd like to remind your viewers that Apple in 1997, remember when I come into Apple, I've been there twice, things aren't going well. In 97, Apple's trading below $5 a share. A $758 billion cap company is trading below $5 a share. Would Apple have tried anything if their share price had been normal? The answer is no. So the first thing is you have to understand where innovation, like crops, are going to grow.
I think it's fascinating that you touch on so many things there, because it also touches on something you and I talked about before the interview started. It's about how to get innovation actually affecting the core business on a more regular level, outside of these times of either crisis or plenty. And this is where there's a bit of controversy in the innovation community around the idea of labs. Now, you've had quite a lot of success with your labs. What do you think distinguishes a successful innovation lab from one which withers and dies and no one knows about?
I think it's three things. One, labs have to produce constructive conflict. So what you have to do is find places where there should be conflict, but there isn't. And what my first lab is across the street from the largest Carnegie One research university in the world, right? So we're not number one at anything here at Michigan, or at least not that I know, but we're number 5 at everything, or number 7, or whatever the number is. So what you got to do is you got to put those people in the room who normally don't have that conversation. Now, they're not amateurs. They're highly skilled. They're very gifted people, but they don't agree. The second thing that you've got to do is you've got to create energy, which is a silly thing to say. Nobody talks about energy. You know who brings energy? Young people bring energy. All the young people out there, I want to tell you, you're really annoying. I was annoying too when I was young. But God bless you, we need your energy. We need your sense of destiny, your sense of optimism. And so I fill these labs with a lot of young people and bring them in on these projects. And the final one is, the way to be an innovator is you have to train people like they used to train them in the old European guilds or in the old Asian guilds or medical school. See one, do one, teach one. So the way in which it works where I work is the first thing you have to do is observe a bunch of these. And then we give you a small role to play, and it's usually chop wood and carry water, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and eventually you become one of the people that leads things. And this is how a lot of my former students have gone on to be successful. I think the problem with most of these innovation labs is they're great at ideation, but they're not good at getting the innovation all the way through the great horizontal system that is the organization. They can't get to scale. So they're thought experiments. They're cute. They're often orphans. So somebody puts them somewhere to get them out of the organization, but they can't get back in, right? That's the problem. And the third is they become a dream palace where people who have really bad ideas, who shouldn't have been given any money or time, actually try and fly those kites, and people give them this sort of ridiculous sense of optimism. So you have to have optimism. I call this the Pangloss paradox. Remember in Candide, Pangloss is, this is the best of all possible worlds. You have to be optimistic to be an innovator, but don't take your stupid pills.
So going back to, we've been covering quite a lot of points from the beginning now. I wanted to touch on something you mentioned as well. It's about comparing innovation to stock price performance, because this would be the holy grail. If anyone could predict what's going to raise the value of the company, then innovation should be it. And numerous studies have shown that there is a positive correlation between stock prices and innovation.
Yes.
What do you think causes that, and how do you build those capabilities in companies to affect the bottom line?
Well, I won't mention who because I'm not authorized to. I have a friend who has a Nobel Prize and in economics. And one of the things that he likes to point out is any time that anyone has built a better mousetrap that actually kind of gets a handle on innovation, the market corrects for it, which it does. Markets are efficient. Thank goodness for that. The problem when you start looking at share prices, the problem is if you look at any given number of indicators, those indicators individually have a very marginal utility. And big data and artificial intelligence can basically pick that up. I used to be an advisor to the Federal Reserve Bank here in the United States. So what's interesting is there's a lot of economic theories about growth. And what's important is innovation is often a component of a lot of other indicators. It's endemic. It's the part of the nucleus of those things. So it's really hard to figure out what's causing what. And the only way you can test financial data is you have to do what's called stress testing. So you have to build a model, go back in your spaceship, and say, would this model have worked? And I have to tell you, every Tom, Dick, and Harry has a black box, and they try and sell them to Wall Street. I do a lot of work on Wall Street, right? They try and sell them on Wall Street, and they don't want anybody to look in the black box. The one thing that we looked at, and that we do a lot of work with a lot of these financial institutions, was that one of the positive correlations that does happen over and over and over again is when the seemingly oppositional indicators show up at the same time. So let me give you an example. Quality is the elimination of variance. New market growth is the creation of variance, right? Usually when you see new market growth or new product development, you see quality go down. It's like when you buy a first model, right off the first line of a car, right? The first model, as the innovation goes up, the quality is going to go down. Think about how Tesla ran scrap, 50% scrap for like 4 years, right? It was terrible, right? But what happens is over time, quality goes up as standardization happens, and the radical innovation basically goes down. Think about, you look at the Tesla now, and it's a pretty doctrinaire car, and some other cars are starting to look like that. So there are these trade-offs. What we found is when these two types of things, these oppositional things, happen concurrently, and it only happens in about 8% of the companies, and it doesn't happen that often. So it's super hard to do. And I'm talking about the largest 2,500 companies, the Russell 2,500, right? So, not the Russell 2,500, but the largest 2,500 companies. I got to keep my data straight here. But the notion is when these two things show up simultaneously, then they typically outperform the market. Typically.
Do you have an example of that?
Yeah. I want you to think about General Electric for a minute. It's a huge behemoth of a company. What's like $380 billion of cap value, whatever it is this morning. I want you to think about how General Electric, on one hand, is very focused on short-term performance. And I want you to think about how many dozens of GE executives are now the senior executive at Fortune 500 companies. And I want you to think about how they spend about $2.5 to $3 billion a year on training, right? These things should not go together. Companies that are basically spending a lot of money training people, think about it. It's not a style issue. You're destroying net present value. You are absolutely assaulting that share price. Think of it on the other hand, trying to develop a person in a short period of time is really assaulting the notion of I'm developing a senior leader. This is a company that's been around for a long time. It's outperformed the market for a long time. It's had some down cycles, but it's still here. And if you start looking at the Fortune 500, which started in like 1950, I think it's something like 9% of the companies still even exist. So the notion is, in order to do this, you have to be in it for the long run, and you have to be able to manage these tensions.
Fascinating. I love GE as an example as well. They don't just talk the talk, but they seem to walk the walk. They do actually put a lot of investment into new technologies, and they're willing to actually shift away from what was previously profitable business models into ones that are more future growth focused.
Think about Jeff Immelt. I actually believe 50 years from now, as much as we love Jack, I think people will be talking about the pivot Jeff Immelt made. I think it was superb.
Yeah. Moving on then, one other thing which I'd like to get your view on, perhaps on a more personal level, is your view on what people get wrong about innovation. And we talked earlier about facts, about the truth of what actually makes a difference around innovation. What sort of myths and lies do you get irritated by when you see them around the internet or in popular books?
Yeah, I think there's a few of them that are really pet peeves for me. One of them is that, that we started with, everyone can innovate, everyone can be great. Yeah, you can in your own way. But I think the notion is the key is to find where you belong in that. I'm very disturbed by benchmarking incumbents. And the reason is very simple. Incumbents are last movers. So when we start talking about innovation, I think what we need to talk about are nascent firms, firms that are startup firms, or firms that are dying. And the reason is, and I like to ask the question, who throws the first punch in a bar fight? I'm from a blue-collar neighborhood, right, originally. And the first person who throws a punch in a bar fight isn't the guy with the beer jacket, who's 300 pounds. It's the small guy with crazy eyes. And the reason he throws the first punch, right, or she, I guess, is because they can't compete on scope or scale. So you're benchmarking all the wrong people, which I think is important. Money, that's always something people say. Money is the constraint. Money is what's holding people. There's money for innovation everywhere. You just got to get the return. And finally, the notion that freedom is what creates innovation. It's the exact opposite. Innovation is born from constraints. It's born from workarounds. Total freedom doesn't create anything. Total freedom doesn't create better art movements. It doesn't create better freedom. You have to have internal freedom, but constraints are making you come up with alternative ways around. And finally, the notion that there are people who are just born as lone geniuses. So here I was talking about Mozart and Einstein, etc., but they weren't born that way. They had experiences that played to their talents. The situation happened to be right. They moved themselves into the right situation, and they were highly effective. The whole American Idol or whatever it is over there in the UK, where I wake up one day and I'm going to be a great singer, and I haven't really practiced or done any. I just think it's baloney. It takes a lot of work. So yeah, those are just a few right up the top of my head that make me crazy.
How about moving on from innovation as a set topic and to something else that you also have quite a lot of history in and viewpoints on, and that's this idea of creativity. We've touched on it a little bit already about the myths of geniuses just appearing out of nowhere, but what in your view actually makes someone creative, and how can they enhance that?
In fact, in my book, even the book on innovation, my work is largely influenced by my graduate advisor when I did my doctorate. His name is Rudolf Arnheim. And maybe some of your viewers, if you don't know him, you should look him up. So if you've ever heard of design thinking or visual thinking, you know who Rudolf Arnheim is. He was kind of the last of the great Gestalt thinkers. And Arnheim really understood that people create in very different ways. I really like Howard Gardner's work at the Plato Project at Harvard, where he talks about different types of learners and I think what goes with that, different type of creators, we could say. And I think that's exactly right. In my world, I boil it down to something a little simpler. I think there are people who are visionary creators. And those are people who are very good at highly ambiguous situations. They're all ideaholics. They have the attention span of a gnat, right? They like risk. They have trouble getting to scale because they can't focus. The opposite of that are engineer innovators. And engineer innovators are what you used to call in the old English model, the KAI model, adapters, right? And they're people who are very good at taking a lot of complex parts, putting them together and refining them. Now, what's important about this is these two types of creators need each other. The problem with the artist creator is he or she can't get things to scale. They have great vision. The problem with the engineer creator is they can't really break the mold. And I want you to think about one of my favorites of all time, Lennon and McCartney. Lennon, this incredible sort of visionary who went to the point of, almost off the planet, right? And McCartney, kind of this amazing sort of genius at putting the parts together. When they went their own way, not so much. Together, lots of tension, wonderful together. The creative process together also shows what I was talking about, innovation. It shows something better, the Beatles, right? Then I want you to think about people who are very short-term focused. People who are great problem solvers, task people. I'm married to one of those. You should come into a situation and go, you're out, you're in, it should be a great commanding officer or field general or something. We call these the athletes. They're very competitive. They're incredible at getting momentum and getting things done. They're very fast. And then I want you to think about the sage, or those millennials out there who share everything, too much information. They do things together. They don't, no intellectual property, but they're held together by values. They have incredible values, whereas the athletes are held together by goals. And I want you to think about those kind of groups, whether it's Watson and Crick or Ben and Jerry, I want you to think about when those kind of people come together, they create something better. So I think in creativity, we're all given a gift. And it's not that we're one or the other, but we're right-handed or we're left-handed. And you can tell what you really are when you're under stress. Where do you go? Are you an artist and you begin to come up with slippery ways to get out of it? Are you an engineer and you develop a process or look at the data? Are you an athlete or you figure out what to eliminate and what to focus on because you have goals? Are you a sage where you really look at what kind of values you have and you talk to all your friends? But the notion is we need each other, I think, to complete the creative process. But I have a terrible warning, and it relates to what we're doing here. My terrible warning is social media. And social media is what we call a micro-segmenting tool. And I used to write about this 15 years ago when all this started. My concern of social media is we never meet the opposite type of creator. We only meet the people who believe all the same baloney we believe, right? And so what happens is you're never confronted with the loyal opposition. And if you are, you unfriend them. My God, the Spanish Inquisition couldn't have thought of this. On a dark night, on a dark road, you disappear, right? So the notion is, in order to, it sort of relates to your earlier question about why these labs don't work and how to make them work, we have to meet the other creator on the road. And we have to fully engage. It doesn't mean we agree, and it doesn't mean we compromise. It means the ideas have to get married and have babies, babies that are not compromises. They're better, they're new, they're improved. That, I think, is the key to creativity. And I think the key is figuring out what kind of a creator you are. And the way to do that's very simple. Look at what kind of things you do that give you energy and what kind of things you do that take your energy. Because things that give you energy, you're probably getting positive social feedback from something. You're good at doing something. And the things that take your energy are probably things you're getting negative social feedback from, and those are probably pretty good indicators. So it's not about what you want to do. I'm really against that self-help stuff. It's not about what you want to do. The world doesn't revolve around you. That's a very narcissistic view. It's about what you're designed to do. And that's different. You have a creative ability, right? You're designed to do that, and you find situations where that can be really something that's rewarded.
Do you think it's possible, though, going back to the title of our website and the podcast, Idea to Value, do you think it's possible, if you have these limitations in your creativity or in your innovation capability, to do things to build your capability to deliver more value?
I don't. And I know that's a very hard thing to say. I think what we need to do is be grown-ups and find people who do. I think we need each other. That's what I'm coming down to. I was just watching a documentary on Rubens, and the real question was, it was on the BBC. Did Rubens do all of his own painting, right? Or was it really Rubens in his studio? And I'm just laughing, going, of course it's Rubens in his studio, and who cares? He became Rubens. The point is, we really do need other people. So if you're not, put it this way, think of any other skill. You're not good at math. You can study math all you want. You could be better at math. Are you still going to be somebody that people come to for math? No. So the issue becomes, you can either spend your time, no, don't get me wrong, we should all have a compulsory education, a basic understanding how the world works. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. But I'm saying, for example, in my life, I'm very good at building things. That's sort of my gift, is how to innovate. That's sort of, I think about how I ended up here, right? But I'm not very good at once things get big. So one of the things I've always had to do in my life when I've been building companies is, as things start to get big, I've had to enlist other people in that transition phase. As they get more powerful, I have to get less powerful, which creates tension. And then there's a part where you have to let go and say, it's now a different stage. This person has to do that. And I go through this in this book, The Innovation Code, of saying, there are these stages where people are going to be good, and the handoffs are the key. It's not just the conflict. It's not just recognizing the situation. Can you make the handoff at the right place and at the right time? I want you to think about Apple. I was an advisor on 2 different occasions to Apple. One of the occasions is Jobs is leaving, right? And what's really interesting is the handoffs when Jobs was leaving was when the company started to become so engineering focused that it was no longer very novel. they were unwilling to hand off to anybody who was an artist at that point. And then they went through this terrible period of time of just sort of agonizing, stasis, General Motors, et cetera. There's a lot of examples of this. And only at that point of a crisis, these are sometimes called sigmoid S's or Schumpeter curves. There's actually a whole school of economics around what you talk about, right? Innovation economics. And Schumpeter basically says, he calls this the point of creative destruction. He says at the very moment that an organization needs something radical, every person on the capital committee, every metric you're running, every process you've got is designed to eliminate it. So it's that handoff. And if it was easy, everyone on this podcast would be doing it. We'd all be bazillionaires. It's really hard. And that's the key. Can you make that turn? Most people can't. And even if you can, it doesn't mean it's going to be profitable.
Jeff, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking with you. We're coming up to half an hour now, and we're running out of time. But I'm sure there's a lot of people who've been inspired by what you're talking about and who want to find out more about you, your work, and where they can find out more. So can you let us know a bit about that? Yes,
a couple things. You can just go to jeffdegraff.com, and you'll learn about the labs and the assessments and the indexes. And I think I've written 500 articles in the past 5 years. So a lot of stuff. Also, the new book, The Innovation Code, explains all this. It's available now on your favorite bookseller. I see it everywhere. It's on the airport yesterday coming back from Raleigh-Durham. And finally, you can follow me on one of the original LinkedIn influencers, one of the original 25 influencers. You can follow me on LinkedIn. So those are all the places to find me. Most importantly, I wish all of your viewers great success with their innovation. And I want to be really encouraging that to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Jeff, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me on.
Today's episode was made possible by members of our premium Deep Creativity Training Program. For less than the price of half a candy bar per day, you too can get world-exclusive daily exercises which push your creativity past its comfort barrier to make you better able to generate ideas in all aspects of your life and work. Invest in yourself now by going to www.ideatovalue.com/deepcreativity and using coupon code PODCAST for 25% off your first order. And don't forget that if you found this episode interesting, to like and share it, and to leave us a review in your favorite podcast player. See you again in the next episode.